physics simulations inside of After Effects. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Hey guys, it's Ben. I am outdoors right now because it's kind of a little noisy inside, so I thought I'd take it outside and get some sun. But I wanted to talk to you today about physics in After Effects. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. You need a third-party plugin by Motion Boutique called Newton 3, and you can get that over at aescripts.com. So you can do things like create physics simulations with Newton, and then take those physics simulations and attach them to null objects, and use another plugin called Element 3D, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and you can actually have 3D physics simulations inside of After Effects. Let's go inside and I will show you exactly what I'm talking about. So here we are in After Effects, and as you can see right here, the RAM preview is playing this particular scene. This is the final scene that we're going to create, and let me say that this actually came about as I was preparing for another tutorial based on a project that I did a few years ago while working on some titles for a CBS pilot that ended up never getting picked up. And this was the brainchild of the art director that I was working with. She is just a brilliant art director. But we wanted to drop some titles from above onto the floor, and we didn't have a lot of time to do it. And so actually this is a recreation of that because I don't have the actual project that we worked on, but this is basically what we were doing. This is a little overly dramatic, but this is the basic concept of kind of what we were doing. The titles drop from above, they drop onto the floor, and we see some real bounce. And we were initially going to keyframe this, and then I remembered that, wait, I have this plugin called Newton that creates realistic physics simulations inside of After Effects. So I used Newton to generate the physics simulation, and then we attached the resulting physics simulations to null objects inside of Element, which control the position of the actual 3D text. So as I was preparing for this tutorial, I realized that there's actually a really simpler way to just go ahead and show how to do this, and that's when I came up with this. So this is a very, very simplified version of that title project. So here we have just a ball literally bouncing on the floor. And the ball is a sphere from Element, but the physics simulation that we generated from this comes from just a 2D image, because that's the one thing about Newton, is that Newton only generates physics simulations for 2D objects. It doesn't generate physics simulations for 3D objects. So we generate for a 2D object and attach it to like this ball right here. So let's go ahead and look at how that is done. We're going to start from scratch. Let's see here. Hit 19. Let's do 1920 by 1080. We'll name this ball. Okay. All right. So now we have. Let's see. Let's bring in our. Image. Here is the image. This is a picture of my desk. So let's do about right there. Okay, so that's the image right there. So we want the ball to bounce on this plane right here, this floor. So let's create a solid. We'll call this floor. Okay, and we are going to take a mask, and we are going to mask out where the floor would be. So this, let's say we want the ball to bounce. We'll come out of screen, bounce right here, and roll off like that. So this is going to be our floor. Okay, so now we need a ball. So I used a shape layer in this particular instance. So let's get the ellipse tool and let's make this in the center, which I can't see where the center is. There we are. Okay, so we will, all right, and we will hold Shift and Command to scale proportionately. All right, so that's our ball right there. Now, it doesn't matter. The details of the shape layer don't necessarily matter, mostly because this is basically a proxy. This is basically we're gonna attach our null, our element null to this. So let's go ahead and create. Let's say ball. That's our ball. Okay, so let's create our element 3D layer. So E3D. We will make this comp size and hit OK, and let's add element to that. Okay, and then let's go into scene setup. We will go here to create. Let's create a primitive sphere, and that's our sphere. Okay. So what I went ahead and did is I actually kind of matched. I don't think this is necessary, but I went ahead and kind of matched the shape layer to the 3D sphere. I actually left the 3D sphere to be the default size in element, and then I just went ahead and matched the size of the sphere to that. So about right there. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so now that that is done, I will turn this layer off, and I will, okay, so now we're going to select those two layers. We're going to go inside of Newton 3 here. There we go. Okay, so these two layers, the ball and the floor, that is something I want to, actually, let's go back out of this. I want to show this. Okay, so I went ahead and I turned off this background layer, and I turned off the element layer. And the reason I did that is because I don't need those layers inside of Newton. So Newton only looks at the layers that are visible inside your composition. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so I have the floor here, and I have the ball. So we want the ball to bounce. So we don't want the floor to bounce. So we're going to change the type of dynamic setting, or change the type of physics setting here. We're going to create, let's see, we want that to be static. So the floor is going to be static. We don't want that to move because actually, let me show you what it looks like. So if we hit play right here, so both of them fall. Okay, so we don't want the floor to fall. So the way that we make that to happen, we change the floor to static, and then, okay, great. Now the floor is not falling. Okay, so now that the physics simulation is running, we have our ball, and that is dynamic. Oh, there we go. So, all right, so let's take the ball, and we're going to move it out of frame right here, okay? And we can, let's see, we can zoom out. Okay, so this box right here represents the composition frame settings. So we have our floor here, we have our ball right here. So the ball's out of frame right here. Okay, so we can go up here and we can grab the velocity tool. And as we can see right here, the direction of the ball is literally dropping. So we have the velocity tool right here. So if we click and we grab this, we can see a representation of how the ball is going to react. So we toss it in there. Okay. Okay, so maybe we want this to, instead of doing that, we just want it to come in and bounce like that. About right there. It doesn't really matter. You can play around with this however you want to. The one thing I do want to do is I want to bring the density down a little bit. And I want to bring the bounciness up. That's probably a little too much, so let's play. There we go. That's probably, well, all right, we're going to leave it. No, let's bring the bounciness down. I want this to be, come on. There we go. Let me get my mouse. I'm using my Wacom tablet, or Wacom, however you pronounce it. All right, let's use the mouse here. Okay, let's add in an actual value here. Let's put 0.75. And we'll hit play. And the one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the magnitude of the physics to kind of make things move a little faster. There we go. So now that that's created, now we want to export this, and it's actually really, really simple. Here are your export options right here. You've got your start frame, your end frame, and now this end frame represents the length of your composition inside of After Effects. And what we could do if you wanted to, because this is checked by default, we could apply this to a new composition. So it will create a new composition and it will apply the physics simulation inside of that new composition. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to uncheck that. And we do want to add enable motion blur. This is mainly for 2D layers if you want to add motion blur in 2D layers, but since we're using this for element, it's not really necessary. It's just more out of habit that I check this box. Now, the other thing that I want to do too is I don't want the physics simulation to run for the entire project. I don't need it to run that long. So if we just watch to see when this ball leaves the frame, it leaves the frame at about 180. So we'll type in 180 right there, and we'll let that render and bake out those keyframes. And there we go. Okay, and here we are. And so you can see right away that that is exactly what is happening. There is our physics simulation. Okay, so now let's add the background image back in. And we can see it's bouncing right there on the desk. So now let's go to elements. So we have our sphere here. Okay. So let's see, where is the starting position right there? So actually, let's go ahead and generate the null inside of element, create the group null, and it creates it right in the middle. So we're going to go position here, and we want the position there. So, okay, that's our starting position. So we'll just go ahead and copy this position into the null's position. Okay, so, and now we will attach this null to that ball. And so now, there we go. Look at that. Okay, and we will turn the visibility off of the 2D layer. And the other thing I'm going to do too is turn off that floor layer. Okay. So that's the basics of what we need to do. We've attached the null object to the physics simulation, and so now we have this 3D sphere bouncing in the scene. So the rest of everything else is basically just gravy on top of this. It's making sure that the ball looks like it fits into the project. So here's how I made that happen. So we need a floor, right? We don't see any, if we look at this particular example, we see that there is shading or shadowing, ambient occlusion in this particular case. There's both. There's shadows as well as ambient occlusion. There is, I applied a texture to the ball, and then we've got a camera move going on here. Okay, so let's go back into the composition here. So how did I do that? So what I did is I went back into scene setup, and I created a plane, and I made this plane really big. Actually, let's go back into, okay, yeah. So the plane is in the same group as the sphere, and we don't want that. We want it to be on its own layer, if you will. So we're going to change that to 2. And then I'm actually going to put that in a group. So that's going to be our group 2 there. So let's hit OK, and we don't see anything. And part of the reason we don't see anything is because it creates the plane right here at this particular level. So we're actually seeing the edge of the plane, if you will. So let's add a camera in here. Okay, let us also go into element. We're going to take this and we're going to go to particle replicator and we're going to bring the floor down. So there's the floor. Okay, so let's find out where the ball hits the floor. About right here. Well, actually, where's the first one? Bounces right there. Okay. There. Okay. So let's bring the floor down to about right there. Now, what we could do is we could go into the render settings and we can turn on ambient occlusion. And I was using ray traced ambient occlusion. So you can see right there, there is the ambient occlusion for the particular layer. So now when it bounces, it actually is... there's some occlusion going on in the particular. Okay, so the shape, the plane is not really in the same position or in the same plane, if you will, of the actual desk itself, and we can fix that. I'm not really going to go into doing that. So what I do want to do is I want to show you how we get rid of the plane and just keep the shadows. So we go into the texture of the plane layer and we click on this gear icon right here and we click on matte shadow and matte reflection, because in the final scene there is a hint of reflection on the desk. So actually, as you can see there, it goes away. And so now it looks like it's just bouncing on the floor. But as I was talking about here, if you see in this particular example, there's a hint of reflection in the actual floor, which I did actually go ahead and add. So how do we do that? Oh, the one other thing that I went ahead and did is I actually put the background image into the custom texture map here. Just so we have it available inside of Element if we want to, which is kind of what I did with the floor. Let's see, not the floor, the environment. So let's go into Element here. So in our environment right here, this is the default environment inside of Element. And so now because we added that custom texture map, we have it right here. So now we see the background right here. And if we click on this, you'll see that that's the environment. So now if we were to add some reflectivity to that sphere, which is what I did, I went ahead and used one of the Pro Shader metal presets. I don't remember exactly which one I used, but we'll just add that one. So as you can see right there, it's responding to the environment of the world, and just click on OK. And so that already kind of adds a little bit more of a realistic reflections on the sphere. We can actually do that as well too to the plane. Let's actually go to a wood material. I think I used this wood boards texture for the floor. Okay, so, but we don't see anything on the floor. Oh, actually we do, because this is the new texture. So actually, if we go back here, you can see right here that this is the floor. There's a very, very faint hint of reflections inside the floor. You can't really see it. We could accentuate it if we wanted to. But again, I'm not really going to worry about that because I just wanted to kind of show this off. But if we go into the plane and we go into reflectivity mode and change this to environment, now when the ball drops, we will see a hint of the ball's reflection in there as well too. Let me actually go ahead and let's go back to, I'll go ahead and, since I'm here, so the glossiness is down, and let's bring up the reflectivity. Let's change the color of this reflection to make it a little bit more of a red. There we go. So we're going to click OK. And again, it's still very, very faint. It's really hard to see. But oh, we forgot to turn on the matte shadows and the matte reflection. So let's do that. Let's click matte shadow, matte reflection, and click OK. And there is our scene right there.
So that's the basics. And as you can see, the ball actually falls on top of that. And the easiest way to fix that is to just move the picture image, and kind of, that's what I did, is kind of scale this up and played around with it to where right about right there. So now it's actually dropping on there. The other thing that I wanted to show, and I'll actually just go ahead and show this in the final composition here. I'm not going to recreate it. So I did add some lights here. And I also, too, the other thing that I did is, if we go into the element layer, I added some additional lighting inside of element, which you can do right here in lighting. I went ahead and added so that default it's set to none. And as you can see on the sphere, if you look at the sphere, let's go a little bit further ahead. As you can see on the sphere, it's kind of plain and whatnot. And I just added some additional lighting to it. I added the, what was it, the product, I think is what I did. The product lighting. Let's see. Yeah, product lighting. So actually, this added a hint of as if there's a light that's coming off from out of screen here, which actually does kind of match how things are, because in the realistic, in my office, there's actually a light that's off of the ceiling right over here. So that actually worked out beautifully. And then let's see here. So that was I turned on the shadows as well, and I left the ray traced shadows. And then with the reflections, I left that normal. And that's basically it. I mean, that's the basic essence of the scene. And as far as the camera move goes, let's go ahead and do this. I did a little Zack Snyder snap zoom here that Zack Snyder loves to do in all of his movies. I'm not a huge Zack Snyder fan, but for some reason I decided I wanted to do that here. The other thing I did as well too is I added a wiggle expression to the point of interest to kind of make it look, or give a little bit of kind of a handheld camera look, to give a little bit more life as opposed to just a static image. And I also added a little bit of wiggle onto the zoom as well too. And I created a null with some expression sliders here that I added into because the normal wiggle expression is, let's see, it's wiggle, there we are, and then open parentheses. Then the first number that you put in here is the frequency. And then the second number is the amount of movement in pixels that you want it to move, so 50 or whatever it is. But the reason I wanted to be able to turn it off, and the reason and the way to do that is, instead of adding a number like 50 here, I attached, let's bring up the slider here. So we go here and we just highlight the 50 there, and then we take the pick whip and we attach it to that slider right there. And so then that gives me the ability to turn off the wiggle expression when I need to. And the reason I did that was actually more so I could actually loop this particular animation. And that's the only reason why I did that. There, I think that's about it right there. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. And actually also too, let me see what you guys are doing. I want to see how you guys are utilizing, if you're utilizing Newton 3. I'll actually put a link in the description to where you can get Newton 3. You can get it over at 80scripts.com, and it's not a cheap plugin. It's I think about $250. But if it's something that you can see that you're going to be doing often, and there's a lot of examples on the website that show off some really, really great abstract ways in which you could utilize this particular plugin. So it's definitely worth the investment, in my opinion. I got it. I've used it a number of times, and so yeah. I mean, it's a really great plugin. I would love to see what you guys are doing. So if you comment below and leave links, or if you can show me things that you're doing with this as well too, that'd be really great.
Thanks for stopping by the channel. I really appreciate it. If you feel that you got value out of this particular type of video, definitely give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. You can hit that little bell notification icon so you can be notified when new content comes around. And I really appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now. Hey guys. Hey there. Hey there. No.